been having off and on internet issues for a while now. And, it's frustrating to say the least. And it looks like I'm having them again. We'll just let things catch up for a second here. So how's everybody doing? I just wanted to check in, waiting on things to kind of catch up. So today I want to kind of talk about something that I think is, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at something else over here on the side. Something I think is kind of important. So it's still hanging. I love it. I love that it's still hanging. All right. I do podcasts and I never have a problem. I try and do lives and I have nothing but problems. Anyway, the reason I'm kind of chuckling and doing this is I had originally planned to work with a friend of mine and do the live together, which is Lindsay, a.k.a. Squirrely Girl 1988. And we were just going to have a chit chat about some things. And unfortunately, she got banned from live, and I hope it's okay with her that I'm talking about this. And it kind of got me thinking. We were going to talk about something different. Actually, I'm not entirely sure what we're going to talk about, but it made me think about what I've seen. I've been an advocate for men and boys. Thanks, Dudson, if I'm saying that right. It just kind of lags on my end a little bit, so I'm going to power through here. It seems like, over the 30-odd years that I've been an advocate for men and boys on various issues, look, you're always going to deal with, let's call them the naysayers. And let me be clear here. I'm not looking to bash anybody here, okay? That's not the objective of this live. It's really to have a discussion, though, because one of the things that I think is affecting society right now, and again, I don't like to talk about politics here on this channel at all. I do actually talk politics on the radio. I've talked about that before. I do have a radio show, a weekly radio show that I do, which is all politics. And for those that don't know, I am a pretty staunch libertarian. I lean conservative libertarian. I don't like the government being involved in things pretty much universally. I'm a believer, to each his own. But setting that aside, when I'm talking about men's issues, what I've seen over the last 30 years is actually, I think, getting worse. So, as I titled this, Why They Silence Men's Advocates, what I've seen is a progression of them silencing us. Now, thank you, Peter. One of the things that happened in the 90s, so obviously much different time, all right? When I first started doing this, it was roughly 1995, early 96 is when I really started doing it. At that point, my first wife had left me the prior May. And, as those of you who have gone through a divorce know, it kind of wallops you. And it happens to both men and women. This is not a gender thing on that. Kind of walloped me a little bit. It took me a few months to get my you-know-what together a little bit. Some would argue I still haven't. But then I started, seeing, I had my first family court experience, which I've talked about on the podcast. You should go check that out. But that really opened my eyes. So then what I tend to do is when I'm faced with something I don't understand, I go learn about it. Now, mind you, this is 1995, 96. The internet was just starting, okay? Back then, I was very much into IT. That was my career. I was very much into computers. Still am. So I was on the cutting edge pretty much of internet, all right? I went back to the DARPA days and all that stuff. Not that I worked for the government, but so I was very well versed in the internet. Now, mind you, for those of you who are younger and don't know, but back then there was AOL, America Online, and most of us had our little dial-up account. My first account, Peter, you'll like this. You were in IT. I go back. You ready for this? I actually started my career in IT in college in early 1980s. For those of you who are younger than me, I want you to picture a big freezer, a chest freezer. Now, say a 9 cubic foot one, if you can kind of picture that and maybe double it. That was what we put hard drives into, platters they were called. Each platter held 5 megabytes, not gigabytes, megabytes. And the platters were, there's no way I can show it on screen properly. That's how far back I go, swapping them out. DOS. I still write in DOS, Peter, believe it or not. I still do. I still think it's the best operating system in the history of mankind. What's old should be new again. I'm still versed in it. It was an IBM something or other. I'm not even going to try and say your name, CO21752. Hey, Doug from Toronto. So anyway, that's how far back I go. I'm not trying to, get too much into IT here. But so 95, 96, I was well versed. Didn't have a clue what was going on with family court and all that. So I started getting educated. And as I did, I started connecting with people through Usenet, for those of you old enough to know what that was. And then, because I was on AOL, they had their little chat rooms, if you'll call them that. And I actually became an administrator in them, which was some scary stuff, guys. I saw stuff in there. Oof. But anyway, so that's how I got involved. And even then, they tried to silence us, right? So we had the AOL chat rooms, and there were some very good ones. There were some very, very bad ones. But even then, they would try and get us shut down. And UK, love the UK. One day I'll get over there, Peter. It's on my bucket list. You were designing and developing a bulletin board back then, Logical. Nice. I was designing databases back then. I was into, ultimately, my career and why I no longer do it. I became a designer and really more of a project manager for CRM systems, customer relation management systems. I had a 64, Richard. Actually, I had an Apple II. I had a 64. I had them all. I wish to God I had my Commodore 64 still. But, I got into CRM systems and that kind of stuff. And then I became the guy that they hired to fix networks and IT departments. And I hated every minute of it. I got paid a lot of money. I went into some big corporations, served as CTO on a couple of them. And my job was to go into these companies whose networks were basically FUBAR'd, full of ID 10T errors. There's a computer term for you guys. But it burned me out. I made a lot of money, but I was working 80, 90, 100-hour weeks for better part of 7-8 years, and then walked away from it. Now I own a gym. Setting that aside, let's get back to the topic. And guys, keep sharing. I love hearing my Atari 800. You want to know what my first experience was? Pong. Richard, I am so jealous of you. You have a 64, 128, a Tandy 1000. I had one of those too. I would kill to have all of them. I would kill to have my Atari 2600. I would kill to have my Pong game that I got for Christmas in 1972 or 73, and it was rad, man. That's what we called it back then. I'm showing my age. Yes, I'm almost 60. But, we got on the AOL boards, and I was meeting with other guys who were going through divorces and stuff like that. And they, we would get a chat room open, and they would shut it down. right? Like fast, like sometimes very fast. Now, mind you, ultimately became an administrator, not administrator, but I forget what the term they used was for AOL. Moderator. That's it, moderator. So, you would sit in chat rooms and just watch what was going on. And I learned how easy it is to basically ban somebody off of them. It was very easy to do. Mind you, at, 24K baud. I go back to the days, my IT friends here, 2400 baud. That's my first experience. I love sharing this stuff. I speak geek. I love speaking geek, that kind of stuff. The Sheldon computer, nice, logical. Still have the user manual in mint condition, or almost new. So jealous. So jealous. I'm trying to think. I have some computers in storage. Probably my oldest one goes back to somewhere in the mid 90s. I do have a computer that has a 5 1/4 floppy disk. Amiga, I remember. Yes. But talking about the topic at hand, they were trying to ban us off then. Then, as I became even more of an advocate and got involved with lobbying. At the time, I lived in New York State. I lived in Albany, New York. Was a very, very much into lobbying for men's issues. I've talked about it many, many times before. I lobbied and tried with a few groups, but we tried to get a shared parenting bill through. We came damn close. I've talked about that on the podcast. If you want to find out more about it, go check the podcast out. I also spent the better part of 3 years. Cold Blank One, thank you for the rose. Appreciate it. Spent the better part of 3 years trying to get a domestic violence shelter open for men. Ultimately did not succeed on that. And a large part of the reason was they were trying to silence us. And by they, at that point, it was primarily NOW, the National Organization of Women. They were vehement in silencing us. And when I say silencing, I'm not talking about disagreeing. I'm not even talking about screaming matches, let's say, to that extreme. I'm talking about they would do everything they could to prevent us from even being able to show up to events. It did not happen to me, let me be clear on this, but I know of guys who tried to attend committee meetings and couldn't get in because security was told they were a risk. It wasn't a leap in logic to figure out who told them that they were a risk, all right? And I kind of know the back end of it. I don't want to get into it here, but basically one member of the legislature who was a radical feminist would not even meet with anyone that was a man. They weren't allowed in their office. And she was on the committee, and she's the one who blocked some of those guys from speaking. I was never blocked. I was able to get in. And to be fair, those guys were great. They would not have caused an issue. But I also understand the other side of it. There were some radical guys, and we did everything we could to silence them because radicals achieve nothing. One thing I don't think people realize about the men's rights movement, I'll label it as that, is that just like feminists, just like anyone out there now advocating for any particular thing, there are always going to be extremists from every group. There isn't a group out there advocating for something that does not have extremists in it. The problem is how they're viewed, right? Again, to talk about politics briefly, you look at things. There's extremists on the left. There's extremists on the right. If you listen to the mainstream media, all you hear about is the extremists on the right. You don't hear about the ones on the left. But they exist on both sides. And I'm not saying good, bad, or indifferent on either side, okay? Same thing was happening with us. The thing that I can't speak to the feminist groups, but I can speak to the men's groups, is we would weed them out as fast as we could. Because there's no benefit to that, right? The extremists create more issues than they solve. So you're always going to have that. But we would actively work to make sure that they didn't do any damage, I guess I'll go with. So setting that aside, but they would still try and silence people like myself because of the extremists, and that wasn't right. So that's now we're talking early 2000s to mid 2000s when I was pretty active in all of this stuff politically. As I've talked about many times before, I lived in Albany. I worked about 3 blocks from the New York State Legislative Building, otherwise known as the LOB. So if you ever hear me say LOB, what is the New York State Legislative Office Building? That's what it's known as. I would go up on lunch hour pretty much every day when they were in session and meet with legislators. Sometimes you couldn't meet with anybody, but on a day when I could, or when they were in session and there were people available, I would just walk the halls. Hey, can I come in and talk to you a minute? More often than not, I'm not surprised, Logical. I know more than I'm going to say here because I don't want to get banned like Lindsay did. But, I would walk the halls, pop in. If I saw a legislator's office open, pop in, hey, can I have a couple minutes just to talk to you? Because one thing you have to understand, for those of you that don't know how it works, is you'll often hear people say, well, I reached out to my congressman and he didn't get back to me. Or I reached out to my senator and she didn't get back to me. They're never going to get back to you, just so you know. Their aides will. They're not. If you are ever fortunate enough to actually sit down and talk with a legislator, whether it's at the federal level, to a lesser extent at the state, it's a little easier at the state, and of course locals much easier. But if you actually get to sit down with a senator, say, or a member of the House in Congress, you consider yourself lucky. It is rare that they will do so. Now, you'll meet with the aides, and I'm going to give you a little secret here. You get the right aide, you're going to get far more than you would if you did meet with the legislator, okay? The aides actually run everything, especially you get a top aide. There's usually one they have. They use different titles. But, again, I would go through the legislative office building, meet with aides. Occasionally, though, catch one of the legislators and have a chat with them. I'd say, can I just have 5 minutes? That's the other thing that the mistake people make is they think you're going to get an hour, 2 hours. The state level, I think the most I ever got, and I'm ballparking here, is probably a half hour, 45 minutes with any particular legislator. And I have some that were very much on our side and were supporters of us and sponsored bills. And in fact, I've worked with some of them to write a bill and help get a bill written, and gave my input on it. But you're not going to get a lot of time with them, all right? But even then, they would try and silence us, right? So I remember I met with one legislator. I forget her name. I was trying to remember it right now. But anyway, not 5 minutes later, someone from Now was in that office just shredding me, telling them everything they could think of about making stuff up, by the way. But that's what we kind of did because their goal was to silence us. You shouldn't speak with him. He's dangerous, that kind of stuff. And the question I want to ask today, and I'm looking for feedback from those of you who are listening and watching, why do you think that is? And again, I don't want to get nasty. This is not about slamming women or any of that. But what do you think is the benefit to that? Because we're seeing the results of it now in society, right? Hey, John, good day to you. Are you from Aussie land by chance? Because you're using good day. We've reached a point. The reason I brought up the history is this is what it was like I said, 20, 30 years ago. And now it seems to have carried over to every aspect of society. Hey, big Jal, is that am I saying that right? Interesting. Reach out to me. If you ever want to contact me, guys, menneedtobeheard@gmail.com is the best way. John, you are from Aussie land? One day, that's another one. UK and Aussie are two of my things, along with Italy and Japan. I'm sorry, I just love the Aussie accent. And funny, I had Fanny on Probably over a month ago now. She told me somewhere in Australia. But anyway, we had a good conversation on Vegemite. Go check the podcast out. I've tried it. She also told me I didn't eat it right. But I'm just interested to see what you guys think about where we're at as a society. Is we don't talk to each other, right? There's no conversations that happen. And I've tried. I've actually, with my podcast, reached out. John, I will tell you, you're going to laugh. Just a side note here on the Vegemite. Back in the 80s, I talked about this on the podcast, but back in the 80s, Men at Work put out that song Down Under, and they talked about a Vegemite sandwich. Well, I got my hands on some, or actually a buddy of mine did. We just took it and spread it on bread because that's what we were told, or what we thought we had to do. Oh, man, was that bad. Fanny straightened me out on how to do it. But anyway, hey, Lindsay, you're on. Squirrely girl, my girl. Talking with the opposite side, right? I was talking about the podcast. I've tried to get some of those that, let's just say, might not agree with some of what I say on the podcast. Because I wanted to have a respectable conversation with them. And I've even thrown it out to some of them to say, I'll let you pick the topic. Not even a debate, just a conversation. Some of the things I wanted to talk about is where we're at with education. Why they think there shouldn't be an emphasis on boys, and allow me to speak about why I thought girls should have an emphasis in some ways. A host of issues. Domestic violence could have been one of them. They will not come on. I've reached out to ballpark now 6 or 7 different ones that I thought might be reasonable to have an adult conversation with. They will not come on the podcast. Adamant no's. And again, I would not be trapping them on the podcast. I do have my fun here on TikTok, pointing things out. I do have my fun on, Instagram, and my Instagram, for whatever reason lately, is just blowing up. But the podcast is a little different. But they won't come on. They won't have that conversation, which is kind of why I want to dovetail that with why they try and silence us, because I think that's the problem. Yes, Big Jowl, am I saying that right? We aren't allowed to have the conversation, which is why it's needed. You're right. If we're going to fix this, whatever this might be, we have to start having conversations, okay? Look, I try sometimes, and I'll be the first to tell you, I will poke the bear sometimes. But I've also, for all that and the fun I have, because I just love getting them going sometimes, but I've also been very fortunate, more so on Instagram than here on TikTok, but or on YouTube. And I will post this to YouTube also later. But I've been fortunate to actually have some decent conversations. And we agreed to disagree in the end, but they were valuable conversations. I'm not going to change their mind. They're probably not going to change mine, although I try to be open-minded with things. But what was good about it is it allowed others to see things and maybe see a different viewpoint, right? And I actually had one this past weekend, which was very brief, but I had talked about, I put a couple posts up, but she had kind of posted on one of my posts, basically saying, because I had talked about men walking away in a conversation underneath a post, and she said, no, it's women walking away. And I said, I don't disagree with you. Women are walking away. And I could tell by her responses to me, she was surprised that I would even say that. And then I said, but it's also true that men are walking away, right? I don't know what the percentages are. I don't care. The issue I have is that we're both walking away. Society's not going to benefit from that, right? I get pigeonholed as a woman hater because I speak out about men's issues. That's one of the ways they try and silence. Yes, Big Al, that at the end of the day, we do have to educate younger men. That's what my goal is. To educate them, to let them see reality, and then make an educated choice, right? And that was one of the things I talked about in the last few days on one of my videos is, look, I've done a few of them that way. This is what's out there. Go listen to them. Again, it's kind of dovetailing what I'm talking about here in this, which is we've got to have conversations. We can't be silencing each other. And let's be honest here. Just a quick side note. The other side, if you will, the feminists, they get silenced too. Don't think they don't. All right. I would never try and silence anyone. I wouldn't. I've had multiple accounts banned here on TikTok. I did get an account banned on YouTube back in 2021, but it had nothing to do with this. That was because of my political side where I said, this was in July of 21. The vaccines were out, and all I simply said was, hey, the data is showing the vaccines do not prevent you from getting the vid or transmitting it. That's what the data shows. They banned me for simply saying that and spreading misinformation. Turns out I was right. They still won't give me that account back, by the way. But anyway, side note. But yes, Big Al, that's exactly my point. If we can sit and have open conversations to see each other's points, it will help. We may not agree. I think that the more conversations we have, even if they're negative ones, so to speak, we're still going to make progress as opposed to no conversation whatsoever, right? And I don't understand, well, I do, but the far extremists, we talked about them a little while ago, they do want to silence us because they don't want us pointing out that some of the things they say aren't really true. The wage gap being a classic one, right? There's the groups that just adamantly will do everything they can to silence that because they know it's a lie. They know that, it has been a lie from day one because they took what was a truth, which is overall men do make more than women. That is true. But it didn't account for things like men work more hours than women. Men work different jobs, which pay more than women. It factored in women who were stay-at-home parents, which obviously they don't make money. So, of course, that's going to lower the numbers. I could spend the better part of the next 4 hours debating the wage gap. And at some point, I will do that on the podcast. Just kind of put that off to the side for now. But that is on my radar. I'm hoping to get Warren Farrell on to discuss it because he wrote a book about it way back when. But anyway, Warren, if you're listening, hey, reach out. He probably won't even remember me. I talked to him in 2004, 5, somewhere in there via email. He wouldn't have a clue who I was now. Yes, the issue is getting shouted down when you try to find common ground. You're right. That's my point, right? So, because as I was talking about, I had that conversation with that woman on Instagram the other day. And that's what we ended up coming down to, right? Is saying, I said to her at one point, I hope you see that we have more in common than we do different. And she goes, I do. It was very interesting to me to have that conversation. And you'd have to go find it on Instagram. I don't even remember what post it was on. But what was also interesting was seeing how some of the other people were reacting us having that conversation. And I did have a couple guys privately message me going, why are you engaging with her? Well, guys, we need to engage, okay? We can't be like them. I don't believe in silencing anyone, much as I disagree with them. And to be fair, I have blocked people recently, and the reason I do is that that's a good point, Richard. Women don't believe that we experience things the same way. Very, very true. And I don't know how to fix that other than to keep talking about it. But if we can't talk about it, we can't fix it. That's hence the whole reason behind this. But having that conversation with that woman, and forgive me, I forgot her name. We talked off and on because I was busy doing things. I'm sure she was too. But better part of most of Saturday, off and on, right? Agreed, Lindsay. An unwillingness to talk to the other side is how we are where we're at. And it's now come out of the gender thing to all of society, right? But it was very interesting to see her reactions. And again, there were things we had to agree to disagree on. But it was also, I think, interesting for her to see that, he does have some points. And again, I don't engage with these things in thinking I'm going to change anyone's mind, even the extremists, because once in a while I just love to poke the bear. I am not going to lie about it. It's just fun for me. They don't get me upset. They think they do. They think I'm like raging behind the scenes. I'm laughing my ass off more than anything else. Hey, Pyro, good day to you too. Yes, I will shorten names, guys, but I do see you. I'm watching this. I love to get the trolls going. And again, and I've talked about this also on the podcast, in fact, multiple times, including with my girl, Squirrely Girl. We were talking about this. It's just fun sometimes, but it's also educational, all right? I'm not doing it to get them. All right, mostly not. All right, that was a lie. I'm not entirely doing it to get to them. I'm doing it so that others can see what's going on. So just before I popped on, I do have another post on Instagram where this woman has been raging for 3 days now, 3 days. Not just at me, but at everyone. And I engaged with her a little bit. Others have too. But again, the final point I made when I was engaging with her is this. Yes, I am the same. No, I men need to be heard on Instagram. Sorry. I'm 3 here because the first couple accounts got banned for no reason. But anyway, this girl has spent 2 days raging. I'm guessing, but it's somewhere around 100, 120 responses she's thrown up. I've had to actually delete some of them because they were really, really inappropriate. I don't mind people. If you bring up arguments on points, I don't have a problem with that. When you start insulting someone, or in this case, there was a couple that were just like, she told someone she hopes they go unalive themselves. I'm paraphrasing it, but that got deleted instantly by me. I didn't even wait to see if somebody moderated it. That's not appropriate. But anyway, it showed that, the final thing that I posted was, guys, go read through this and see, because my new phrase lately, and I picked it up from the other side, is today's modern woman, right? I've been using that phrase a lot. I'm not using it to disparage anyone. I'm using it because they use it. And that's one of my things. Could I name one point that we agreed on? Absolutely, I can. After some discussion, she realized what I was saying about boys in education falling behind was a major issue. That is something. Yes, you're right, Pyro. They are desperate comments by people with no valid arguments. And the problem they have is I am a world-class trash talker. I played football semi-professionally, almost made the Arena League. It was the last cut. And I played nose tackle in college, high school, college, into semi-pro and some other things. So one of my goals was, as a nose tackle, you're right over the center. Well, if people ever knew the conversations that were had between linemen, my goal was to always make the guy miss a snap count once or twice a game. Like, I would throw him off, and I'm not trying to brag, but I am a world-class trash talker. So sometimes that comes out online, and I got to be careful with that. But, having that conversation with that woman, it was just, frankly, she's probably a little out there, if I may. I did it to have, and I finally closed it down by saying, guys, go read this to educate guys. All right. Look, a common thing they'll throw at me is you say it's all women. I do in some ways because I'm just simply responding to the it's all men. So one of the things that I believe that we as men need to do is take the standards that have been established over the last 50 years and apply them equally. Not beat somebody over the head with it, but if they're going to say it's all men, then it's fair for us to say it's all women. If they're going to say whatever, we apply the same standard back. And they get really upset about that. Really upset. And then I'll say, why are you upset? I'm just simply doing what you're doing. And again, it's not trying to be nasty or mean for the most part. All right, I'm not going to lie. It's really, though, to educate others. And again, I'm not going to change their minds, but if I can get someone to see that if you're running around screaming, it's all men on, let's pick your subject, and it's fair for me to say, well, then it's all women. Some others will look at that and go, that's absurd. And I'm like, you're right, it is absurd because it's not all women. It's not all men. And that's the point I want to make. We have to stop dealing in absolutes. You got it, Squirrely Girl. She's like my buddy, just so y'all know. We chit-chat DMs though occasionally. Yeah, Pyro, you're right. I like to use ammo they don't understand logic. But I like to use their logic back at them. Again, I'm not trying to be mean with it. But, see, this is why I like you, Lindsay, because I know who the Sith are. You know who the Sith are. That's why we're compadres. It's when they try and silence me and many others, what are they accomplishing, really? What are they really accomplishing with that? They're creating I call it an insular bubble. I know there's a million other terms for it, but they want to live in that bubble, and anything that's outside of that bubble, they have to either shut down or silence or whatever, right? The problem is we don't live in bubbles, right? Some people call them echo chambers. That's another common one. It's why I don't like to block people. I do now occasionally do so because of what I've experienced before. My first three accounts that got banned, I never blocked a single person on any of them. And unfortunately, it probably what led to me, they mass reported the last one, for example, on Christmas Eve of all times. But, I don't know why they think that this is going to help. Because what's happening, and we're seeing this in society now, right? Again, I don't like to talk politics here, but just if you'll bear with me for a second. One of the things that I was talking about on the radio 2-3 weeks ago, we had a conversation about whether or not the United States should go through a peaceful divorce. And I will tell you up front, I think it's inevitable we're going to. That's just my belief. I'm not picking a side either way here, all right? What I'm saying is that if you look at things objectively, you have the red states, you have the blue states. They are so far apart now and growing further and further apart that you can't have conversations. There's no way the United States survives that. It's just not going to happen, okay? Whether or not it happens in my lifetime, my co-host does not believe it will happen anytime soon. I actually do think we're probably at best 10 to 15 years out. It's coming. Again, I don't like to get into politics, create a debate here and all that. Those are my beliefs. You could tell me I'm full of it, and that's fine. You're more than welcome to. But having lived in a very blue state, New York, for many years, and now living in a purple starting to turn red state, North Carolina, I can see the differences, right? I have friends in multiple places that are on opposite sides. And then the universal thing you're seeing with all of that is there's no conversation. And that's my point. Society can't exist without conversation. It cannot and will not. Pyro, you got a point there. It's actually something I have said many times, and we're right on the edge of it, right? And I hope it doesn't happen. Let me be very clear with that. But I also suspect it's going to. And what happens from there, who knows? But, when you look at what's going on with all of this, society in general, but the men's issues versus the women's issues. Look, I will tell you right now, I firmly believe there are many issues that need to be addressed to help women. I do. That said, I believe there are more issues that affect men right now. Education being probably the biggest one I would point out right now as far as society goes. Domestic violence being another one, right? I'm a huge advocate on that. The way that's kind of shaken out, not a topic for today, but I've talked about it before. But the point being is there are issues that women face, but we can't have that conversation. And when they're actively seeking to silence those of us that are bringing those points up, doesn't bode well for society. It just doesn't. Exactly right, Big Al. At the end of the day, until we can learn to speak to each other, issues stay unresolved. The question is, how do we do that? I don't know. You look at, for example, social media, which is now the town square, right? One of the things that I am a strong advocate for is the repeal of Section 230. This will probably get me banned off TikTok, like, watch this disappear, but I'm going to talk about it. What Section 230 does, it does a lot of things, but how often do my videos get reported? I haven't had one in probably 6 weeks, which means now it'll happen tonight. But probably wasn't a week that went by I didn't deal with at least some reporting. But as far as 230 goes, what's in a nutshell, what 230 allows is social media companies to ban people for no reason. They can do whatever they want, right? And what's interesting is I actually just went back on Twitter this weekend. I have not been on Twitter since 2016, that whole election cycle. I was like, enough of this crap, all right? It was a cesspool. Now, I was a big user of Twitter. I spent half my life on it. Far too much time of my life, Mostly on the sports. I wasn't doing politics on there. I was doing sports, and talking about them. And I'd watch the NFL games, and they would have score updates and all that. I loved Twitter. It became a cesspool. I got off of it. I'm back on it now. Why did I get back on it? I can't say I'm a fan of Elon Musk. I like a lot of what he does. SpaceX being a perfect example. I also see some issues. Again, I'm probably 80% positive, 20% somewhat negative on him. Jane Ann, I do wonder something that causes a woman to reach a point where she gets physical with her partner. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Maybe I can help you with that. Right, bashing men is fine, but standing up for us isn't. It's not right, and it's why we're at where we're at, right? And it's something I've talked about a few times, different ways, which is I am a believer that part of the issues with the pew-pew in the schools, if you catch my drift, is the way boys are being treated in schools and the way society is treating them. Think about this. Is a boy now who's 16, he's grown up for the last 20 years, 15, 20 years, hearing literally from birth that he's to blame for all of society's ills. Men are no good, blah, 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 blah. I could list them all. There is no way that doesn't affect the psyche, especially of a teenager, right? So is it any wonder that they then, in a manner of speaking, and I've talked with a couple of psychologists, they agree and disagree with me on this, but they feel dehumanized. That's the way I put it. They're lesser. So of course they're going to strike out because they don't see another human being as a human being. Again, what makes a woman reach the point of physical abuse? Honestly, it's no different, in my opinion, in my training for a woman or a man. It's never acceptable either way. I think it happens. This is a good question. Like, why does it happen? I'll address your side of it, which is why do women do it? In some cases, not all. Let's be clear on this. It's because they think they can. Keeping in mind there's really no repercussions, right? My ex abused me knowing full well nothing was ever going to happen to her. And it got worse when the police did get involved. And I've talked about this many times before, is she laid me out with a golf club. And police showed up because we lived in a duplex and our neighbors next door, the walls were so thin, we heard everything, okay? They heard it. They called the police, fearing for my safety. Police showed up and they were going to arrest me. This was in 94. They were going to arrest me. Had my neighbors not come over and went, no. You've got it completely wrong, officers. Okay. It's 100% was her, right? Now, of course, the officers are like, well, did you see it happen? Did you see if he did anything? No, because there's walls, but they heard enough. The only reason I didn't get arrested is they said they were vehement in their support of me, and thank God they were. Can you tell one serious drawback men have according to women after the conversation you had? And I have no idea how to say your name, so I apologize. I'm not for not saying it. I'm guessing that's Arabic. If you can put that into English, I'll use your name. One serious drawback men have according to women, well, it depends on the women, right? A lot of women will acknowledge things like men are being treated bad in society. Men are not, education. I'm kind of on that right now. Theodore, from Greece. Thank you. Generally, women will acknowledge there are issues, various issues, and it kind of varies. I'd have to really, that's a woman's job to answer more than me. But in my conversations with them, they do see that there are, good women do see that there are issues. Education is one. Divorce is a common one. They'll acknowledge that things are not fair. Can I explain how men can win in courts? Keep the questions coming, guys. I know I'm jumping around a lot, but winning the courts, my ex wants more custody for more child support. Well, I can't give you legal advice because I'm not a lawyer, but I will tell you I am in the process of writing an ebook, which is going to address a little bit about what you're talking about, which is how men need to approach family court. I'm not coming at it from a legal perspective. Here's what you need to do. If you don't, number one, you need to find a really good attorney because, unfortunately, trying to go pro se is not going to work for most guys. I handled a lot of my cases pro se. I will tell you, I spent hours and hours studying the law. I am not a lawyer. I am not a legal paralegal or any of that, but I got really well versed on New York State family law, and you have to get versed on your state because every state's different. To the point, the judge actually said to a law guardian, he knows the law better than you did at one point. That was the sweetest day of my life to this day. But for a man to win, you have to present facts. If there's nothing else to take away from what I'm about to say, you've got to cut the emotion out. You have to approach it almost in a robotic manner because the law is the law. The law does not see gender. The law as written, okay? Not saying judges don't, saying the law, you need to make it crystal clear. Oh, your mother's a family law attorney. Did she represent you? Usually they don't recommend doing that. But to answer, Gio, your question, you have to become a robot. And I was. I've talked about it before. My lawyer called me the Terminator because no matter what happened in that courtroom, I never showed any emotion. And it was hard, my friend, very hard. But if you can show the law and how it applies to your case and why you should have whatever, more custody, whatever you want to do it, right? The T1000, baby. That was me. You're right, Lindsay. Okay, she found your attorney for you. See, and that's another thing I would say is, and I'm talking about that in the book I'm writing, which is 90% done. I'll be releasing it shortly, and it will be free. But you need to, if nothing else, the one thing I'll tell you is you've got to get the emotion out. You've got to deal with it elsewhere. Get a therapist if you need to. I have started a Patreon. It is live now. I am starting to, you're going to hear me talking about that more as I come. I don't want to be, can you edit it? Sure, I'll send it to you, Lindsay. In fact, I had already thought about that, just so you know. But in the Patreon group, what I'm going to be doing is offering the ability for guys to come together as a group online, right? Because I want to be able to help guys everywhere without fear of, someone getting the information, so to speak. Because here's the problem you have with some of these. There are Facebook groups out there, all right, for men. And men will start opening up. Here's the problem. They get infiltrated, and it's not hard, okay? Don't worry, Lindsay. I know you'll be honest with me on what I need to fix on it, too. But those Facebook groups, unfortunately, can be screenshotted, all right? Trust me when I say this. Lawyers know what they're doing, okay? They know really well what they're doing. I talked about before in my IT days, I did work for a law firm to fix their IT department for about 9 months. I couldn't stand it, by the way. You would be amazed at what they have the ability to do. They have gobs of money, and they will have people that will go looking online till they find you. So one of the reasons I want to do the Patreon, I'm not even going to do it on Patreon. What I'm going to do is the people who become part of that group, we're going to meet on Zoom, and it is not going to be recorded. All right. And one of the things I'm working on, I'm talking with some attorneys to make sure, or to find out if this can be considered privileged, because we are talking as, for example, I want to do a domestic violence group for men. Generally speaking, in most states, what's said in those cannot be used in court. Not always, though. Again, it's interesting. I did see Tammy's video. Yes, Alan. What's interesting, though, is you talk to different lawyers, you're getting different opinions. But by being able to hopefully have it considered as not therapy. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a shrink. I'm not any of that stuff. But I am a trained peer counselor. Peer counseling, I'm hoping, might kind of fall under then it's protected. But the idea being to make sure that this stuff can't then be used against you in court, because if they can find it, they will. Whereas if I'm doing the groups on Zoom, I control all of that and who has access to it. And again, it's going to be for guys, right? But yeah, so guys, if you have questions about this stuff, I'm here, reach out. But Gio, just to kind of finish off my thought with you, one, I would suggest finding a really good attorney. And second of all, I would really work on the emotional side of it, because the minute you show any emotion, your case is over. You've lost. Jane Ann, my first thought when I think of a woman being abusive is untreated bipolar or schizophrenia. Yes and no. I do think that, and it goes both ways. All right. One thing I would caution you on is whatever you think that would cause a woman to do it generally would apply to a man. I can tell you that unequivocally. It's really not much different. Same thing, by the way, victimhood. Like we were talking earlier about We have so much the same, more the same than different. From domestic violence, and I'm well versed on this, okay? Male victims of domestic violence really experience the same things that females do, all right? And vice versa. So to answer you, Jane, because I think it is a valid point you're making, mental illness does come into play a lot. Untreated mental illness specifically. But usually, in my experience, when you have that happening, it's usually both sides. The other thing that people don't talk about with domestic violence is it's usually mutual. I know that's radical to say. Watch me get banned for saying that one. But the reality is, and I don't remember the exact numbers, and I'm sure they've changed from way back when, but ballparking off the top of my head, it was somewhere around 60 to 70% of domestic violence was mutual at that time, meaning both did it to each other, right? So of the remaining, of course, they would say, it never, and I faced this many times, they've never seen a case where a male was a victim, but it kind of gives you some perspective on that. But hopefully that answers it. I do think that you make a good point, Jane. It is often untreated mental illness. That is part of it. Doesn't excuse it, by the way. Let's be clear on that. But it does come into play. What else you got, guys? I mean, I've got probably another 10 minutes I can hang out if you guys want to throw things at me. I'm going to try and do these lives. I've been pretty consistent lately doing them Mondays at 4. It does fit my schedule pretty well, as long as I'm done by roughly 5:15 or no later than 5:30. TikTok Fugitive, I'm kind of watching through the thing here. I do not know your case, so I don't know anything about it. I'm going to be honest with you. If you want, reach out to me. menneedtobeheard@gmail.com. And I will be more than happy to hear what you have to say. And guys, that is the best way to reach me. If you want to reach me, your best bet is to email me, with the understanding that, I get dozens of emails a day. If you DM me here on TikTok or if you're watching this on YouTube later, I get on any given day, no joke, 1,000 or more DMs of various types from my various social media accounts. There's no way I can read them all. I would wish I could, and I wish I was big enough to have a staff to read them all like the celebrities do. Well, that's what you don't realize is, it was funny. I was having a conversation with a politician probably 4 or 5 months ago. We were talking about social media, and he was on the air with us, and somebody called in and was blasting him for not paying attention to them on social media. And he's like, dude, I'm paraphrasing wickedly, but he was much nicer at it than me. This is why I can't get into politics, because I would not be nice. I would tell it like it is. But basically, he said, look, I don't even look at my social media. I have aides that do that for me. I never see things. If something's important, they'll bring it to me, but I don't even know how to log into the accounts. Same thing with celebrities. They're not the ones posting usually. There's exceptions, all right? I don't have that kind of thing. I have little old me, but hopefully in time I can get there. I'm not going to lie. I want to grow this. One of the things that I regret more than anything else, I mean, we all have certain things, and I'm not one to live in regrets, but the one that I do live with is not getting that domestic violence shelter open. And one of the things that I want to do, TikTok Fugitive, I'm still watching all these, by the way. One of the things I want to do is kind of get going again. I do have someone coming on the podcast from one of the 2 male shelters in the United States, and we're going to have a discussion on that. But how do you handle mental manipulation with my ex towards my son? That is known as parental alienation. tough one for me to answer, not knowing specific details, and this isn't the place for it. Again, Gio, I would advise you, that's a question for an attorney. I can help you as far as how you need to handle it emotionally and all that, which again goes back to being unemotional. But you need to, as Lindsay just beat me to it. I was going to say document everything. Thanks, Lindsay. You beat me to it. You need to take a lot of notes. You have to be able to prove it. And your emotions don't prove anything. Facts proves things, right? So if she sends you an email, if your child sends you an email, then you need to keep that email. Do not delete it. I see and hear guys doing that, okay? I don't care how innocuous it might be. If she sends you an email saying the sky is blue and the grass is green, you save that email. And don't just save it electronically, print it. Because things disappear electronically, okay? Document the hell out of everything. If you have an interaction, write yourself a journal. Keep track of what's being said. Yes, good one, Big Al. Never blast the other parent. Do not engage in the same behavior. It's the worst thing a guy can do. And by the way, there's guys that do it too. Let's be clear here. There are guys that are parental alienators. Exactly. I love these comments you're making, Big Al. Never respond in kind. Have I considered starting a foundation to raise money to build men? Jane, we did have one. We had a 501c3 in New York. It was called Fathers and Families of New York. I was the secretary for the organization. We did exactly that. We were trying to raise money to open a shelter for men. I've talked about this many times before. We actually had a place that we had the option to buy. It was going to cost us about $200,000 for the building. And we had some people that were going to contractors that would help us to refurbish it and all that, but we needed the $200,000. Our goal was to get $100,000 from the government. Never got that. And I've tried like hell. Well, I say by the way, I'm not tooting my horn. It was a group of us doing it. But we also tried we had to raise some of the money on our own. We asked guys to give $1. I've talked about this a million times in the past, both online and elsewhere. And I've done seminars and stuff. $1 per guy in New York. We would have had $6 million. Because roughly at the time, there were 5.5, 6 million men in New York. $1. We couldn't even get that. Couldn't even get that. So yes, I agree. It would be an awesome idea, but we just can't get the support. It's I don't know why that is. It's tough for me to answer you, because people say, well, why won't they give $1? I don't know. One of the things that I'm going to be doing with my Patreon is part of it is, for $1 on that, I kind of stole the idea. If you want to just support, then I will take that money and use it to do things. For example, I was working with some of the guys out in Iowa, Jesse, in trying to get a shared parenting bill passed out there. Now, again, they have no money, right? But I was trying to help them. But one of the things that could have worked, because we started to do it in New York, and they got wind of it, and boy, were they upset. We were going to put a billboard. So in Albany, New York, if you're not from that area, obviously you wouldn't know about it, but the legislative office building for the state of New York is in downtown Albany, and there's a highway, basically, that runs right to it, okay? With at the time, I think it's still there, a huge billboard they could not miss. We had talked to the company. We had done everything we needed to put the sign up going, support shared parenting bill. I forget the bill number, blah, blah, blah. It was going to cost us $10,000. We couldn't even get that money raised. And I was willing to throw $1,000 of my own in, right? And some of the other guys were going to throw that in. It's what I could have afforded at the time. Couldn't even get that. So I love the idea of opening a foundation. It's the reality. That said, I will be talking with them on the podcast to see if they have any ideas. We need a mascot. We actually had a mascot, Lindsay. So Fathers and Families of New York, we always used one of our phrases, and I did not come up with it, our president did, Jim, is we need to talk about the elephant in the room. So I bought on eBay this huge elephant costume. And we had a shirt made, and his name was Fafney, which was Fathers and Families in New York. So Fafney would go around to various places, and he was the mascot. I wonder whatever happened to that costume. I'm sure they still have it. Yeah, one you would think men would support it. I do not know. Why do you think? I do not know. I only got a few more minutes, guys. I'll stay on as long as I can, but I do have an appointment at 5:30 that I have to go to. Why don't men support one another? You know what? Let me table that and let's have that discussion down the road. Blue pills, maybe. What kind of blue pills? You know, and I've talked about this before. You have to give credit to the women's groups. They're masterful at getting people to get involved. Masterful at it. Genius level at it. Gio, that's a point, but it's not a valid. I agree. I see what your point is. I'm not trying to disparage you in any way, but that's also a reason why we should be sticking together and fighting back, right? We have been defeated too many times because we don't stay together. We don't work with each other. It's because we let them win, so to speak. We need to come together because, as I was just saying, the women's groups are masterful, geniuses at it, geniuses. And I will give credit where credit's due. They have been for decades now. They have been playing 3D chess. We're not even playing checkers. We're not even playing tiddlywinks, all right, as guys. It's our own fault. It's not their fault. We need to come together. We need to support one another. Yes, we do tend to think that we can do it our own. We can't. I battled in family court and was alone for years. It was the biggest mistake I ever made. Once I started getting support, my life changed in so many ways. I'm a very happy person right now, all right? It's a daunting thing, right? We need to come together. And one of the things I'm going to do, I'm shilling for the Patreon, but one of the things I want to do with that Patreon group is put together some action groups within it. If you want to check it out, it's patreon.com, Men Need to Be Heard, all right? Again, if you want to join, great. I just got it going. Not even one town, one city at a time, Big Al. We need to do it across the country all at once because it's a national fight. Jane, yes, that is why men don't report it. It's also because they know it won't be taken seriously. All right. Good points, though. So I would love to have this discussion even further because I'm running out of time. But you guys are bringing up some good ones, right? But I'll probably forget next week because my brain is fried. But I would love to have that conversation of why guys don't come together and why they're not willing to fight. And I get it that we've been defeated, and we have been. Let's be honest. We have to figure out a way to come together. I am willing to be part of the leadership if need be. I fear nothing, and I'm not saying that. I have nothing to lose. They can't do anything to me. They've already tried to cancel me I don't know how many times. I'm still here. I don't have to worry about dealing with family court ever again or all that stuff. David Youngberg, how you doing? I find writing can be really hard alone. I do a lot of writing. I've written books. I also do fitness, so I've written fitness books and stuff like that. I do a lot of writing. I actually find it better to work alone, just to kind of be the devil's advocate on that. We have to make them start losing money and use that money against them. Logical, that's a good point. But we need to have money before we can make them lose money, right? And reality is we got to be careful with that. Oh, I know I have a rabid squirrel, and you and I are going to be working together, Lindsay. You know that. but we need to figure this out. So I got 2 more minutes, then I'm going to wrap it up. I've actually gone a little bit longer. Guys, I really appreciate you watching, listening, me babble on. As I said, I want to keep growing this. Thank you, Jane Ann. I really, really want to get these groups going for men, support groups, because I think if nothing else, if we can help men, the saying I've been using is not just survive, but thrive in today's society, however that may be, because everybody's different. That's my goal right now. That's my mission in all sorts of different ways. All right. Yes, it involves things like family court, domestic violence, all that stuff, jobs, all that stuff. I want to be able to help men navigate through it. You know, as they love to point out, I'm an older guy, but that also means I have a lot of experience. And I'm willing to be the facilitator of that. And that's where, you know, finding the right ways to do that and creating those safe spaces. Because, again, things like Facebook groups, guys, you got to be careful with that. Somebody asked me, the reason it's on my mind is somebody asked me over the weekend, why don't you create a Facebook group? Because they're not safe. Anything you say in a Facebook group, I don't care how private it is, can be found, okay? It's in writing, so to speak. So we have to be careful of that. The Patreon, you can put comments there and all that. That's great, but I want to get deeper with it. I want people, guys, to be able to come into the group on Zoom, for example, domestic violence, and talk about it. I've been through it. I said I was a peer counselor. I ran a group for a couple of years, and help them move forward. All right. Same thing with guys dealing with family court. So that's my long-term plan, just to let you know on that. Again, thank you for watching. And I do appreciate a couple. I don't know what these diamond things are. I saw somebody sent me a rose and I got a diamond. I have no idea what they are. I don't even care, to be honest with you. Maybe somebody can shoot me a thing and let me know. But I really wish you all well. As I said, I'll be jumping on doing these lives. My goal is to do it every Monday at 4. I can't say with absolute certainty that's going to happen. You may see me jump on here and there with other things. I did a quick live the other day where we were talking about music. And, you know, it's kind of fun for me to do that. So I'm going to wrap it up on that. Thank you so much, everyone who's been with me. And like I said, one final thing. If you want to reach out to me, your best way to reach me is through my email, menneedtobeheard@gmail.com. All right, guys, I'm going to sign off, and you all have a great night.